go ahead and move forward. Thank you, Hannah. As I shared earlier, I am Addison Nelson. I am the Director of Community Strategies here at the Greater Cincinnati Foundation, and I am actually the lead program officer for this experience. So I will be guiding this process on the decision-making side, as an example, the application side, as well as working closely with the city and other funders as we release the dollars from this experience. Hannah Hilditch, who's also on camera, if you could wave, Hannah. She is our coordinator here for the community strategies team. You will get to know her as she's the one that touches or interacts with every single application that we receive. If you have any technical issues, Hannah Hilditch would be the best person to contact, and she will guide you through our online grant making system founded here towards the end of our conversation. So Hannah, for technical assistance, if you're asking questions or wondering if your organization may be eligible or if your program or project is a good fit, that is a question for myself. The third picture that you see here is Mr. Aaron Brown. He is the Racial Justice Fund Director at the Greater Cincinnati Foundation. He is my supporting partner as it relates to the administration of the RFP, because as I was sharing more in the conversation, we received a tremendous response last year when we released the RFP for the first time, and we expect the same. And in order to get through this quickly, to get you decisions as quickly as possible, be responsive to your questions and things, he will be my partner. So if you can't get a hold of Addison for programmatic or project-based questions, Aaron would be the best point of contact. But we do have a centralized email address, which is bootsonthegroundfund@gcfdn.org. And again, that will be shared again later in the presentation, as well as posted throughout the RFP and things. So myself, Hannah, and Aaron are monitoring that account daily. So the purpose of this conversation today, so I would like to certainly manage or level set on expectations, is to clarify the requirements and the process for the Boots on the Ground Fund request for proposal. So context there, why it's important to make sure that we clarify who the RFP is intended for. Do not want folks to go through the process of applying, waiting the time period to hear a decision and learn that you were not a good fit for the RFP cycle. That was some of the feedback we had to give last year. So again, want to make sure that you're at the right place in terms of at the workshop to understand what is required to be eligible for Boots on the Ground. So overall, what is the Boots on the Ground Fund? So essentially the city of Cincinnati, so these are the majority of the dollars we are releasing are city of Cincinnati dollars. The Greater Cincinnati Foundation contributed to the pool of resources, Interact for Health, and we have other generous supporters who contributed to the pool of $750,000 to release to small grassroots community-based organizations to literally help strengthen the capacity of such organizations. And we aim to drive equitable change within the city of Cincinnati. I just want to highlight a few words. These are capacity building grants for small community-based organizations, and we're defining small as less than $1 million in operating annual operating budget. You have to be more than 6 months old, for lack of a better term, as it relates to the age of your organization, because we do collect financials and we want something to be able to review and consider the sustainability of an organization. And you must be either located in the city of Cincinnati, driving change or impact for residents within the city of Cincinnati, or located in the region, but primarily serving the city of Cincinnati. So what I really want to emphasize here, that these are city dollars. So it has to impact the city. These are not county dollars. So I'm not in the city, but I'm in Hamilton County. That does not work. It has to be within one of the 52 neighborhoods within the city proper of Cincinnati. All right. So I alluded to who contributed to the pool so far. We have $750,000. That is an increase from last year. Last year, we distributed $610,000 to 31 organizations. The 31 organizations received $8,000 to $25,000, and they were selected amongst a pool of 136 applications. And their total requests totaled more than $3 million. So we had to take $3 million in requests and boil it down to $610,000 that were distributed amongst 31 organizations that were all serving the city of Cincinnati. I cannot emphasize that enough. It has to serve the city of Cincinnati. And so we anticipate funding a minimum of 30 grants with the resources we have today. So what do I mean by the resources we have today? Decisions will not be released until April of 2024. So between now and April of 2024, this opportunity will continue to be socialized throughout our community into generous donors, and others may decide to contribute. So the pool has the potential to grow. And so that's why I say, as of today, November 30th, we have $750,000. Grants can be a maximum of $25,000, and we expect to award a minimum of 30 grants. How that compares to last year, we have more money. It's the same maximum grant size. And last year, we were close to awarding the minimum that is expected for this year. We also expect an increase in the number of applications that we received. We received 136. My team and I were ballparking receiving 180. So you can ask yourself, Addison, why are you sharing these numbers with us and things of that nature? I just want to share and emphasize to everyone that this is truly a volume game, right? So not to minimize the importance of what we're doing, but if I could fund everyone, I certainly would, but I literally don't have the resources. And in that same spirit, it takes time to read all 136 or the projected 180 applications. So last year received a lot of calls. When are we going to find out? When are we going to find out? We understand the eagerness and the excitement. We're excited too, but we really want to do our due diligence and make decisions that will have a strong impact on the city. So it's not like we're moving slowly. This is our priority. We have more than just the 3 people that I introduced earlier dedicated to this project, but it takes time just to get through that volume. All right, so I just wanted to emphasize and share our experience from last year and talk about the potential for next year when funding is released. All right, so here's the timeline. So the workshop is today. I'm very excited that you all have taken this step. It's 45 people on this call, so very excited that you've taken this step to learn more about the actual process. A week from now, we're actually hosting our first capacity building workshop or technical assistance workshop on fundraising and development. So this is the 100 level. We understand, I recognize some names and faces on the call already, that there's a varying size of organizations on this call. So with that, we want, and again, keeping in mind that these resources are directed towards small, grassroots, beginning organizations, right? So, because of that, we want to make sure that we give you additional tools beyond the support or the funding. So how do I raise additional dollars? How do I leverage, right, the $25,000 that you receive from this grant? Who else can I identify in the region or throughout the city to, match your dollars or things of that nature? Next, the following Thursday, December 14th, we will have program design, delivery, and evaluation. This particular workshop is very important as you try to enhance and build out your narrative that you will include in the application. So to give you more background, We do offer declination calls to those organizations who are not awarded funding. And so what those calls entail, they're about 15 to 20 minutes. We answer the question, why wasn't I selected? So why it takes so long to give funding decisions is because essentially we capture comments, we capture the reviewers' feedback, things of that nature, and then we share that with you in a verbal capacity. So prevailing themes are this, prevailing themes are that. And last year, I would share with individuals or organizations, oh, this is how we interpreted your organization to serve the community. And we would receive a reaction of, no, that's not how it's serving. It's doing this or that, right? So this particular workshop on December 14th will help ensure that organizations are able to clearly represent their program or project through the written application. Because of volume, as I shared earlier, we do not go back and do further research, look up the founders or look up past programming or anything else. We use the paper and the attachments that you provide. So I just want to encourage as many folks who are available or possible to please participate in the December 14th workshop. Those workshops are here hosted at the Greater Cincinnati Foundation, which is located literally across the street from Sawyer Point, for those who are familiar with that landmark. Free parking, we will have light snacks and beverages for those who are able to participate. And these workshops are not recorded. So in-person attendance is required if you so choose to engage, but we do look forward to hosting you in our space, and you're more than welcome to come yourself, send a representative from your nonprofit, or to send anyone, board member, community partner, whatever the case may be, to receive this information. After we all go away for the holidays, so we want to be very realistic, we understand that we're backing up against the holiday season, we will take a pause and come back the second business week, for lack of a better term, of the calendar year. So on Thursday, January 11th, we will have a workshop focused on governance and leadership and how to improve that leadership of a nonprofit. Again, because the target audience, grassroots, new nonprofits, small nonprofits. So we identified that as a relevant topic. Again, all of these are on a Thursday, December 7th, December 14th, and January 11th at 4 o'clock. So hopefully you've picked up on the pattern. Boots on the ground, if there's a big item, moment, touch point, it's going to be on a Thursday. If it's a workshop, it's going to be at 4 o'clock. But Thursday is your day. If you're like, okay, is anything coming up on Boots on the Ground? It's going to be a Thursday. So how do you register for these workshops? You can go to our website, gcfdn.org/RFP. You will see the listing of our 2023 request for proposals. Select Boots on the Ground. It's a drop-down menu, as perhaps you saw, to register for this event, and hit register today. So I cannot emphasize enough the importance of these workshops, because again, we are very realistic that we cannot fund everyone. And so we want everyone to be able to at least walk away from value added content. So is your space accessible physically? Yes, it is. Again, we have a flat ground lot right in front of our building. It's free. We have already notified our building staff to let the gate up. So for those who are familiar with the space, you may know that it's a gated lot, but they'll let that up. You come right in. We have doors that you can press the button and it will open automatically if you need wheelchair accessibility, as an example. We are right on the first floor. There's no requirement for an elevator or stairs. There's no steps or anything that you have to traverse, and you can come right in and enjoy our space in that regard. So I have another question. If you have an organization that has not reached the 6-month timeframe for consideration, would they still be eligible? Yes, for the workshop. Anyone can come to the workshop. We invite you to come yourselves, invite others who are perhaps thinking about starting a nonprofit, so they haven't quite launched yet. but any and all, even if they're outside of our region or if they're not serving the city of Cincinnati specifically, more than welcome. Thank you for your question there. So I think those are all the questions that I see at this time. So I'm going to go ahead and move forward. The proposal deadline, again, keeping with that theme of Thursday, is Thursday, January 18th at 5 p.m. So one thing that I want to call out here, again, I mentioned and introduced myself, Hannah Hilditch and Aaron Brown. There's going to be a lot of volume coming in on January 18th. We will do our absolute best to get back in contact with you. But what I often share with folks with any request for proposal cycle that we run, it's easier to email someone back than to have to call someone back. And so you could say, Addison, what do you mean by that? Unfortunately, and my team can attest that sometimes I sign on in the evening, right? So I can respond to your email at 10 p.m., but I would never call you at 10 p.m. So if you really, really want to respond, and some people will say, well, that's counterintuitive. I personally, it's faster to get a response from me if you email me. So not discouraging you from calling, always happy to talk to nonprofits and members of the community. But if you want the fastest response, please, I encourage you to email us at the boots on the ground at gcfdn.org, because also, depending on the volume, we can pull in other leaders throughout our organization to help us get us across the finish line. Whereas if we funnel everybody through a phone call or something of that nature, it will just be more difficult to do that. During the end of January, the Greater Cincinnati Foundation, we are organizing everything, for lack of a better word, in order to distribute the applications to our community volunteers. So our community volunteers are the actual reviewers and decision makers of the grants. So we are just running the operation in terms of accepting the grants. We're using our portal, our subject matter expertise as grant makers, but we are not making the decisions. We recruit about 25 volunteers. We break them up into groups by the funding focus areas, which we will go over here shortly. And they read every single application by their funding focus category. They score them, we discuss them, and then we go through all the applications that way. So the organization of all that data that we will receive will take place at the end of January. In February and March, we are convening and having those conversations. Then in end of March, early April, we are organizing the decisions in order to effectively communicate with everyone. And then decisions will be communicated in April, and funding will be released about 2 weeks after you receive the decision if you are receiving a grant. So when we disappear, we are working, again, please remember the volume that we're managing, and we want to give everyone the respect, or every application the respect that it deserves. So we read every single one, and then we move forward. It moves forward through the process. If you are awarded funding, you then have a 6-month check-in with a member of the GCF staff. So 6 months from April would be in October of 2024. And then in April 2025, you will provide a final report. And this is all electronic through the Foundant system. So once you apply, your original or initial application will still be there. You will see a follow-up report for your 6 months, and then your final report for the 1 year, and it will all be managed through the same system, and it does provide reminders. So with that, seeing no questions in the chat, I will move to the funding focus areas. So the city of Cincinnati, based on the needs of our community, our city, has identified these 7 funding focus areas. So organizations that are most competitive in this process have demonstrated experience in their project, program, or the purpose that the organization was created is to address these 7 areas. So homelessness prevention or access to affordable housing, reduction of food deserts or affordable, healthy foods, healthcare and public health, and again, the access component of that, gun violence and gang prevention. So reducing that in the city of Cincinnati and preventing individuals from joining gangs, just as an example. Workforce development, right? So how do we build the economic mobility of those within the city of Cincinnati? Youth development. So for those, I would say 21 and under, right, to make sure that they have positive things to engage and spend their time. So that is, to be honest, our most popular category, our most competitive category. So out of the 136 applications that we received last year, 56 were in that category. So if you represent an organization who would apply under that funding focus, again, what is your point of differentiation? How are you impacting, driving change in that arena for those youth? You really have to position yourself in a competitive manner. Mental and behavioral health, and including substance use services. So we understand, especially after the pandemic, that mental health is very important and needs to be addressed. And that's a heightened need currently in our community. So we are accepting proposals, projects, programs who center around those works. So Addison, am I ineligible if my project or program or organization does not fit neatly into those 7 categories? The factual answer is no, you are not ineligible. We do have a button for those who perhaps have not opened the application yet that does say other, but it is very hard to receive a grant. So out of all of the applications that were submitted last year and the 31 awarded, none of them that selected other were awarded. So please keep that in mind as you consider, how do I identify myself? That's this funding focus area is something that my staff reviews before we release the application to the volunteers who will review and make the final decisions. But if you select other, it is very hard to be competitive. What are you looking for when it comes to healthcare and public health? Like programming also, are you looking for the programs to be free? No, the programs do not have to be free. They just have to be accessible. So I'm going to exaggerate my example, but if it's $100 to participate in your program, is it truly accessible when we talk about driving equitable change in our city? And yes, we are talking about programmatic, being very vanilla, not saying that my example would be the most competitive, but say, for example, if you had a relationship with a community center and you wanted to teach, I would say, elementary, middle school children about the 5 food groups, introduce them to perhaps fruits and vegetables that they don't easily have access to or may be afraid of or won't try. As an example, again, very vanilla, not saying that my example would be competitive, but yes, very programmatic type of opportunities are considered for healthcare and public health. We've had examples of people partnering with seniors to make sure that they made it to their healthcare appointments and things of that nature, just as an example. Can you share some of the grantees that were awarded and the work that was funded, especially in the youth development category? Yes, if you go to our website, all of the grantees for Boots on the Ground and any of our cycles for roughly the past 3 to 4 years are all listed. Thank you, Hannah, for dropping that in the chat. So if you look in the chat, Hannah has dropped the list of the Boots on the Ground recipients last year, but you can also find that on our website if you go to nonprofits in the header option, and it has recent grants, and you can click on that to see any category, the funding amount, as well as the name of the project that was listed. Again, thank you so much, Hannah, and thank you so much for that question. So not seeing any more questions, I will continue to move on. Use of funds. You can support, expand, or strengthen an existing program. You can launch a new program. We're not making people build or making organizations build new programs. If you have something that is thriving and you just want to continue to elevate it or have it drive impact in our city, please feel free to do so. You can build organizational capacity. And so those are, that is a category that is eligible for these dollars. But I do want to emphasize with the organizational capacity, if I am an organization, I'm going to use arts and culture as an example, because that doesn't, it can address the issues, but they don't exist for those issues. As an example, or funding focus areas, I should say rather, we would not support the organizational capacity, or it's more difficult, I should say, right? Last year, they did not support organizations from an organizational capacity, because what is that? Oh, the investment of new technology or part-time staffing or incentives for volunteers or things like that. If your core mission, your core vision, the reason why you exist does not align with the funding focus areas, last year those organizations were not supported. If it did not, like, it had to be apples to apples for it to be competitive. Things we, regardless of your mission, your vision, why you exist, we will not fund campaigns. We will not fund capital campaigns. So we want to buy a vehicle, or we want to buy a building. We will not contribute to that, or any special events. I must emphasize this because we got a lot of submissions that we had to disqualify. If you are submitting something that has a 1-day experience, so we're going to launch 1, 2, 3 day. And at 1, 2, 3 day, we're going to bring preschoolers together, and we're going to count to 300 times, and we're going to do everything 300 times because it's 1, 2, 3 day. And after that day, we never come back together again for the next year. Those things will not be funded. So no festivals, no concerts, no literally 1-day events. The committee immediately puts those aside. So I know, again, my examples are very vanilla. I don't want to call out any real examples. I would never want to use a real example in a negative situation or a negative illustration. So again, if it's 1 day, it's going to be disqualified. I see there's something in the chat. Okay. All right. I'll keep moving forward. So the criteria, which I have sort of already alluded to, you must be a 501c3 or have a fiscal agent. Okay. So we do, but the fiscal agent must be a 501c3, and you would submit their financials as well as your own. All right. You must have an annual operating budget of less than $1 million. And your project or program must directly impact residents within the city limits. Preferences, excuse me. I see a question about the 501c3 status. No, your 501c3 status cannot be pending. In that case, you would need to use a fiscal agent. And we do verify before the committee even gets any of the applications, we do verify your status. So yes, great question. Thank you for that. Preference will be given to those applications that prioritize inclusion. We are very fortunate to live in a very diverse community. So we want to see that represented in the programs or projects that are funded. A prioritization of community voice, which I will go to and explain in greater detail here in a moment, and engaging leaders of color, right? Again, going back to that benefit of our community or our city is a very diverse. So we want to make sure We want to make sure that we have a nice representation of those who are leading this body of work. Clear and measurable outcomes, or SMART goals: specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time bound. So we will go through that in a little more detail. Partnership and alignment with community-wide efforts. In our seat, we have the opportunity, and when I say at the Greater Cincinnati Foundation, we see a plethora of nonprofits every day. And oftentimes we think, oh, we can amplify this issue, or we can make a greater impact if there was more partnership or alignment with pre-existing community-wide efforts. We don't always have to build from scratch. We can always build on what is pre-existing. And so when we see demonstration of collaboration and partnership, those applications are more competitive. For those organizations who've been around for more than 6 months and have some lived experience that they can point to in their application, hearing about those learning from past experiences, it is not a demerit if we hear about a failure. So I learned that, for example, I read an application last week that they were serving 8-year-old youth, or excuse me, 8th grade youth. And they said, we learned that in order to get the best quality attention, that we should feed them. So we were like, yes, we would agree, feed the babies so that they would pay attention to the STEM education that you're delivering. So hearing that, you're taking the feedback of your participants, you learned from past experiences, again, makes your application more competitive. And then asset-based approach. And I will go into more detail regarding what that terminology means. But essentially, at the grassroots level, are you speaking affirmatively, positively about the community in which you're serving? One thing that I often say, are you doing this to or for a population, neighborhood, or community, or are you doing it with, right? Because you see the talents, the strengths, and et cetera, that they are able to bring to the opportunity. And last, but certainly not least, and very important, if you are a 2023 recipient of Boots on the Ground Fund grants, you are not eligible to apply. So we want to distribute the resources broadly throughout the community, and we are not looking to fund organizations that we funded in this calendar year. And so those organizations were made aware, but they will be welcomed if Boots on the Ground continues in 2025. Those organizations can come back. So there was the question, can you elaborate on the fiscal agent? So the fiscal agent, we will send the money to them. We do not send the money to you. So you have to have a formal written agreement with the fiscal agent. I have not encountered anyone having an issue with identifying a fiscal agent. Most nonprofits who are large enough to serve as a fiscal agent, they would be very accustomed to what that process would take. And again, they would have no issue because there's a formal agreement to provide you with their financials in order to upload them with your application. So fiscal agent, formal agreement, fiscal agent receives the money and disperses it to you based on what you all agree and align on beforehand. And when we are evaluating your application, we consider the strength of their organizational sustainability. I hope that answered your question. Okay, great. So I'll move on to the next slide. So I talked about community voice. This is essentially what we are thinking as we are evaluating your application. Does your organization involve community members in the decision-making or programming? So do you have people with lived experience? I'm just making it up, but if you're trying to address food insecurity and reduction of food deserts, do you have someone on your board, a committed community volunteer that is involved in your organization who can speak from their lived experience, like, hey, this won't work because our residents don't have access to whatever barrier, right? So when you share your idea, your program, or your project, it is important to amplify or lift up those voices, those members of your decision-making committee or team, because that shows that you value their lived experience and they would be closer to the answer, right? Because they have the lived experience. Do you, okay, I talked about the lived experience on your staff. That's another avenue or board, one that often comes up in some of the grants that I review, having professionals that have experienced perhaps homelessness in some of those nonprofits that service that need in our local community. And then do you collect feedback for those that you serve? So earlier I used the example that, you know, you may want to feed the eighth grade girls before you introduce them to a new complex STEM opportunity, to better get their attentions and things of that nature, how they receive that. And was it just the girl saying, hey, feed me? They had evaluations after every single session that they held. Okay, so 501c3 organization apply for the grant and be fiscal agent to another organization that applies. Yes. So the question is essentially, I'm going to go for the grants as a 501c3 myself, but Addison Great Girls, right, making up my own nonprofit, but I don't have my official verification yet. I can approach you. You agree to be my fiscal agent. We both can still apply. Yes. Thank you for that question. All right, SMART goals. I said before, specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time bound. Literally, what are you trying to do? I often ask my staff this, what does success look like? And list that as a goal. Is it measurable? So we're looking for percent increases, percent decreases, numbers impacted, reduction of truancy, increase in happiness or better moods amongst the youth when they show up after school, whatever the illustration that makes sense for your nonprofit. If we're looking for a number, please incorporate as many numbers because that's how we can measure it. Is it achievable? Your grant cycle will be 1 year from when the dollars are released. So can you really build, I'm being exaggerated for on purpose, but can you build a grocery store in 1 year? No, you cannot build a grocery store in 1 year. So whatever success looks like within the time frame, is it have, and I'm making it up, but is it have your application into the planning and development department at the city of Cincinnati by this point? Is it have the community development, or excuse me, the community council, right, in the community in which you're trying to serve, have letters of support and alignment with the leadership and the residents of the particular neighborhood, right? So what is realistic from the date that you are notified that you have received the dollars to the date that you have to submit that final report? Is it relevant? Your goal should be aligned with your project. So not that your organization already, again, I'm being very vanilla in my examples, just naturally because you exist, you donate 1,000 coats to kids. But if you're talking about meals on tables, your goal should not mention coats to kids. And then I've also already spoke to briefly about the time bound. You have 365 days, you have 12 months. And again, recall that because of volume, we are not going to go back and say, oh, 1, 2, 3 nonprofit. Can you refine? Can you fix? Can you highlight? Can you help me understand? We will not do that because we can't do it for 180 organizations. So please take time to evaluate and consider your SMART goals. And again, I just want to highlight that December 14th workshop. It will help you develop those goals during that session. All right, moving on to the last, asset-based approach. So an asset-based framework speaks to the strengths of the community. So we're at the heart of the city. We are historically insert example community. We have the richness of generational participation, cross-generational participation. I'm making it up in order not to identify just or select just one community to highlight, but all 52 of our neighborhoods have strengths. Identify the strengths in the community that you're seeking to serve. Illustrate how you're building on the pre-existing assets. Everyone, every community, every neighborhood has something to give. And the way that this shows up the most, it's reflected in tone. There's unfortunately some applications that we receive to the foundation that speaks disparagingly about the populations that they serve. And that's when I will speak to my team and say, hey, they're doing this to the community. They're not doing it with the community, right? So tone speaks volumes. If you write the application, we're giving folks 2 months this time. Last time they had 30 days. So let someone else read it who's not close to the work. We want to be inspired. We hope that you are aspirational, right? These are very positive terms. We understand that our neighbors in our community are hungry. We understand that, unfortunately, we've all seen residents of our city sleeping on the streets, right? We know what the issues are. We want to lean into how we can solve them, right? So you may ask, why am I really centering on this slide for such a long period? But this is the easiest way to get kicked out of the pool. The easiest way. So being a little less formal, I'll say, check your tone before you submit your application. So being very transparent and honest there, again, as I want to respect everyone's time. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to my partner, Hannah Hilditch, who will walk you through our grant making system, Found It, and how to literally submit your application. All of our applications are electronic. We are happy to support you if you need technical assistance, but we cannot accept any faxes. We cannot accept any Word documents via email. We cannot accept any mailed in copies. It is an online grant making system. So with that, Hannah, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Addison, and hello, everybody. I will be talking about our online grant making portal, which is called Foundant. As you can see on our slide here, there's a screenshot of Foundant to the left with the steps on the right. So it's pretty straightforward to access our application. I'm sure many of you have seen on our website, on our RFP page that lists all of our RFP information. There's the boots on the ground section, which you can click on to get to the drop-down menu and select the RFP, the request for proposals. And in that PDF, there's a hyperlink to our grant making system, which will take you here. So if you are with us for the first time, your organization has never applied for a grant before, you're going to want to create a new user account and a new organization account, which as you can see, it's very small, but on the right-hand side, there'll be steps that you can take to do that. So you'll create your account, your password. If your organization has been in our system before, but you are a new staff member or a new user to the site, please reach out to me or my colleague, Jenny Geishheimer, whose information is also listed on the website, to get you set up in that organization's account. Please don't create another account for your organization. We'll have to merge them on the back end. And if you're an existing user, welcome back. You can just sign in with your username and password that you've already created. And if you're not sure which of those categories you fall into, we'd be happy to look it up for you. So again, just reaching out to us at bootsontheground at gcfdn.org. And then when you're ready to go, you've logged in. Addison, you can go to the next slide. You'll see something that looks like this. So this will be your application dashboard. If you've been in the system before, you can also see some historical requests or active requests you've got going on. But for applying for Boots on the Ground, you're going to hit the apply button that's at the top of the screen, circled here on the slide. And you can go ahead, Addison. You'll reach this page, and conveniently the Boots on the Ground application is the very first selection. So you can identify it, and on the right-hand side, just hit apply. And then the request category on the slide is incorrect, but it'll be Boots on the Ground application you want to click on. And then next slide, please. It'll take you into the application. You can check out all of our questions that we're asking. There's an option to download a PDF file of the application if hard copy is more your style to write down. But if you, as Addison said, keep in mind that we only accept electronic applications, so you will have to transpose that information when you are done with it. We require 4 attachments for this application. One is your income statement and balance sheet for the past 2 years, or as up to date as possible. If you're not an organization that is 2 years old, that's okay. We'll be asking for a project budget, your organizational demographics, and a board list. And in the application, all of those attachments have a template that we've created that you can download and use. So these are always available on our system. And the final document, if you're utilizing a fiscal agent, as Addison mentioned, you'll be asked to also include the fiscal agent's income statement and balance sheet as well. So there will be a place to upload that. The application deadline, as you said, is January 18th at 5 p.m. And it's very easy to have technical issues pop up at the last minute. I'm very familiar with that, and sometimes it is definitely not applicants' fault because our Foundant system has always had like a glitch here or there. But if you're really wanting to have a stress-free experience, I encourage you to apply as soon as you're able and well before the deadline. If not, Boots on the Ground at gcfdn.org is the way to contact me about it, and we'll get to you as soon as we can and make sure that we meet those deadlines. And there is a question in the chat. If we are a for-profit business, do we need to submit a board list? Addison, do you want to take that question?
My initial answer is yes, because there has to be some form of governance beyond just the owners. But if you want to submit an example of maybe your leadership team or whatever the case may be, like the whole who determines your mission, your vision, all that jazz, we are happy to take that conversation offline to make sure that it aligns. So great question there. My initial reaction is yes, because even for-profit entities have boards or governing bodies. Is the grant considered a reimbursement grant? No. As soon as the decision is made, as I shared before, within 2 weeks or so, depending on the volume, right? You will receive, if you're selected for $25,000, you will receive your money. You have the option of a wire transfer or a paper check, but it will be sent to you within the 2 weeks, the actual resources. Thank you for that question. All right, Hannah, anything else you want to add before we move forward?
Nope, I think that's all for me.
Okay, thank you so much. So we've alluded to this, but just want to reiterate, if you are selected for funding, there will be a 6-month check-in in October of 2024, and then a final follow-up in April of 2025. We will ask you about any learnings that you've had within the first 6 months. The first 6 months, let me take a step back, is very informal. So yes, there's a report, but it's a conversation also with a member of the Greater Cincinnati staff. So a member of my team, my community strategies team. So it's like, hey, how you doing? Tell me about your project. Anything you've noticed or surprised about, any obstacles, any support that you need, as an example. We're looking to how many times have you come together to do whatever you said you set out to do, or how many youth have you impacted, or whatever the situation may be. These reports are a time to say, hey, I took your $25,000 and I doubled it to $50,000. And this is who I partnered with to do that, as an example. And when it comes to the final report, we are asking for the specifics related to your measures from your SMART goals. So if you said, I'm going to distribute, making it up, 1,000 coats, and you distributed 999 coats, that's the number we want to see, as an example. This is not, again, a punitive process. This is an opportunity for all of us to lift up and impact our city. So we would truly like to hear what you actually were able to accomplish. And depending on your project, we want to hear those good news stories. We want to hear about the families, the schools, the insert example in which you were able to impact. We do amplify those. We share those with our personal donors at the Greater Cincinnati Foundation. We have one boots on the ground grantee from last year, as an example, that's working directly with our marketing team, because they were able to do so much with $22,000 that we awarded them within this calendar year. So please tell us what's going on. We care, we read, we pay attention, and these will be the two opportunities to do so. So with that, just again, want to highlight some tips and tricks. Please go to our website. We do have a frequently asked questions section that may help you get the answer to your question faster than emailing or calling one of us. Again, cannot emphasize enough, and it's surely because of volume. Your application is your primary means of expressing your work to the review panel. We will not call you. We will not follow up. If you receive a call from us, it may be because you're missing an attachment, as an example, but depending on how close we are to the deadline, we may not call if you're missing, right? So we must be realistic in terms of volume and things of that nature. Make sure that you have all the required attachments. If you think there's a nuance or a uniqueness to your situation, let's address that now. Right? Because there's ways that we can put notes in the system and things of that nature as well. You are granted quite some time, much more time than the last pool of applicants to apply. So if you have not already done so, please open up and review the application as soon as possible. To be very transparent, many of our staff will be away for the holidays after the third week of December. So we want to make sure that we're a resource for you, but we do want to be transparent that we will be taking personal time with our families. After you submit, if it's after the deadline, you will not be able to make changes to your application. If it's before the deadline, Hannah would be your partner. But again, as it's noted here, it'll be quite challenging. So overall, we are a resource. Making I statements, it's easier to hear back from me if you email me versus phone calls. Again, from my illustration earlier, I can email you back at 10 p.m., but I would never call you at 10 p.m., just as a case in point. And lastly, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Although it's easy to find myself, Hannah, and Aaron Brown on our website and identify our email addresses and phone numbers, for the purpose of this RFP, we highly encourage you to email us at bootsontheground@gcfdn.org. If you reach out to the city of Cincinnati directly, they turn around and redirect you to us. So they will do it themselves, or tell you directly, or they will call us and provide your information. So, Hannah, so please, there are several people who have access to the boots on the ground email address. So with that, again, thank you for your time, and we look forward to receiving your applications. The email address is bootsontheground@gcfdn.org.
And I'll throw it in the chat just now so everybody has it. Addison, there was one question above that I was hoping you could clarify. Can a for-profit business apply with a fiscal agent?
Yes, they can.
Thank you.
All right. With that, Hannah, I think we're good to stop the recording. And I wish everybody